Good afternoon, fellow philosophy students. My name is Melinda Arcadia, and welcome to my final presentation, Health Education, the Backbone for Introspection and Self-Determination. So just to start off with what we're going to be talking about throughout this presentation, we're going to be touching on what the freeing and functioning health education philosophy is. I know that we had already reviewed it, but we're just going to re-review it for this my personal health education philosophy, which, as stated in the initial slide, is that health education is the backbone for introspection and self determination. I'm going to touch on some personal beliefs, realizations, and the career goals that I have for myself. And then for supporting claims of this philosophy really goes hand in hand with harm reduction. So I'm going to touch base on the effectiveness of Narcan training and distribution, harm reduction in relation to lowering the spread of HIV, and the effectiveness of health education in lowering teen pregnancy rates. So, as we learned about in this semester already, the freeing and functioning health education philosophy, it originated in 1978 by Greensburg to reduce victim blaming mentality in health education. We still see a lot of victim blaming in health education. It's where you make people feel bad for eating foods that might not have a whole lot of nutritional value in it, or we shame people for using drugs, and abstinence-based only sexual education is a really big one where blaming people and saying you shouldn't do this action because it will lead to this. The main goal of freeing and functioning is teaching people about health and wellness and certain health issues, encouraging people to make their own health decisions with full disclosure, and not to victim blame or scare patients into healthy decisions. Rather, allow them to make the competent decision knowing information and risk. You know, it's the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. My personal philosophy, when I say that health education is the backbone for introspection and self-determination, um, I mean that in a very literal sense. You know, self-determination is where a person controls their own life, and introspection is when you're able to examine and observe your own mental and emotional process. I feel that everyone has the right to bodily autonomy without fear of being shamed or blamed for the decisions that they make in their life. I think that health education is simply a tool to help people make informed decisions so that they can reflect about certain decisions that can help better their physical or mental health. I believe that people have the ability, that they should have the ability to make informed health decisions and allow someone to have control over their own mental and physical health. I firmly believe that not everyone wants to live a perfectly textbook healthy life, and not everyone can. And so, simply, my philosophy is that health education is here to just help people realize, hey, this could hurt you, this could help you. It is yours for the decision to make on what you're going to do. Some personal experiences that I have. I'm very openly queer. Growing up as an LGBTQ teenager, I witnessed improper, non-inclusive sexual education. I do live in Massachusetts where we have non-abstinence-based sexual education, but it's not queer inclusive. So that means that I saw people who were partaking in risky behaviors just because they didn't have proper education on certain risks. So that means that I knew people in high school who were having HIV scares because they were having unprotected sex simply because they thought since they were queer, they didn't have to worry about anything. I saw peer drug abuse and homelessness, LGBTQ teenagers that are a higher statistics for homelessness in the United States. Um, and I personally, I live in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is central Mass. It's right dab in the middle. We are the second highest opioid related death in the state. We have the we have the second highest opioid related deaths in the state. I've witnessed opioid overdoses at a young age. The first time I had actually ever witnessed it was when I was 18. I was driving and I saw a car go into a tree, and I noticed that the driver was seizing, and I went over to the driver and I opened her car door and I checked her vitals and I made sure she was breathing, and I called 911. I had assumed maybe she had epilepsy or was having like going into diabetic shock just because I had known people who had diabetes. And then when I waited, they actually Narcaned her on scene, and I was alerted that she had overdosed on heroin. We've also lost in a very impactful person in my life. He was a very close family friend. No one knew that he was struggling in active addiction. And unfortunately, when I was 20, he passed away from a heroin overdose. After I had finished high school, I volunteered in an LGBTQ youth group. It was called Safe Homes. I actually went there when I was a teenager, and the way that it would work is that it would teach us about inclusive sexual education. It would teach us about drug use, rights in school, resources if you were being threatened of housing insecurity, all of those things. And so when I graduated high school, I actually became a peer leader and I worked with the teenagers, and I realized that this was kind of where I wanted to be career wise. My personal realizations is that people are constantly being shamed for how they live their life. People are being shamed for what they eat, how much they exercise, if they use drugs, if they don't use drugs, their sexual orientation, their sexual preferences. And I realize that it's not my place to tell someone how they should live their lives. Simply give them the tools to make the best decision for themselves. My goal as an educator is to give people the tools to help them control their own lives. It's not my place to say whether you should use drugs or not, or if you should eat right or not, but simply say, this is how you can do it if you decide to, and what is the safest route you can go about. My main goal is to create a non judgmental space of just education. Career goals. Um, LGBTQ people are disproportionately affected by drug abuse and homelessness, and I've really fallen in love with harm reduction. I really want to work in the harm reduction field, which means that I want to either work with clean needle dispensaries, safe injection sites. Unfortunately, Massachusetts doesn't have any safe injection sites currently. I do actually conduct Narcan trainings. I have done them in a few high schools and a few after school programs where I've taught people how to give Narcan, what to look for an opiate overdose. I would love to provide in the community with safe snorting kits, testing kits, especially because fentanyl is a really big issue. Fentanyl is being laced with heroin, and so people are taking heroin and they're accidentally taking fentanyl and then they're overdosing on it, along with clean needles. Clean needles. I basically just want to do a community outreach and harm reduction and maybe work with drug recovery centers. Unfortunately, Massachusetts is still a little behind in the harm reduction world. Rhode Island actually has some really great harm reduction facilities, and there's one, I'm forgetting the name of it, but they actually go to different events in the community where they'll provide Narcan and safe snorting kits and testing kits and clean needles if you need them. And I just think that Massachusetts really also needs to get on that board because we really need to start helping the community as a whole. My long-term goals is I want to work with the city to advocate for safe injection sites and provide just comprehensive drug and sexual education to the community. Because, like I said, it's not my place to tell you how that you shouldn't be doing drugs. More so, how can we make sure that we are preventing more harm? How do we make sure that we're making sure that you're not getting HIV, hepatitis, MRSA, all those bloodborne pathogens, or accidentally like overdosing? So, and if you're using with your friends, how do we make sure that you are recognizing the sign of an overdose, and so making sure that you have naloxone, which is Narcan, on you? Just some supporting facts of this philosophy of basically letting people decide letting people do what they want, just giving them the information. We've seen an 11% decrease in opiate use death in Massachusetts after the naloxone distribution programs without any increase in opiate use. So that means we're not seeing more people say, oh wow, I have Narcan, so now I can try heroin. No, it's more so, oh wow, I've already been abusing this drug, but now I know how to recognize the signs and symptoms. And so if someone I know is also abusing it, or if you are just in out about your life and you're just like, wow, I think that person is overdosing, you can give them Narcan. Also, fun fact, I always carry Narcan on me, and that is the biggest thing is that whenever I teach, I always pull out my little bottle. As you can see the little picture down there, if that's what Narcan looks like, it's a nasal spray. I always pull it out of my purse because I've had to Narcan a few people, just living in the city that I do. With comprehensive sexual education, it has led to a 3% decrease in pregnancy as of 2022, which is amazing. Teenagers are at the same statistics to have sex if they have abstinence-based sexual education versus comprehensive sexual education. It's just the fact that with comprehensive sexual education, it leads to a decrease in pregnancy. Teenagers are going to do what teenagers are going to do, but if we teach them how to do it safely, then we're seeing a decrease in teen pregnancy. With syringe service programs, there's an association of an estimate of a 50% reduction in HIV and hepatitis C incidences, which is amazing. So all of this to say is that people are going to do what they want to do, and it is not our place to tell them how to live their lives, just how to do it safely. So that's where the free and functioning philosophy is, just to accept that not everyone wants a textbook perfect healthy life, and not everyone can do that. Not everyone can eat as healthy as you think. Not everyone, they're not no one wakes up every morning and thinks, wow, today I'm going to abuse drugs. There is a long line of system of oppression and history and mental health and all of those things that can go into why someone might abuse drugs. I know that I can't fix a very old problem as to why someone is dealing with substance abuse issues and what might have led them to that. But I do know that everyone deserves to have the full information about the possible health risks that they're taking, and allowing people to have the full information allows people to make those informed decisions, which allow them to have full autonomy over their physical and mental health. Following this philosophy has aided in the use of harm reduction and effectively lowering opiate related deaths, HIV spread, while comprehensive sexual education has lowered teen pregnancy rates. So, in conclusion of it all, let people do what they want, and as long as they're doing it safely, prevent harm wherever you can. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that everyone here has a safe rest of the semester, and it's been a pleasure working with everyone.